2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA. Go.
So rises a new era of American spaceflight.
American astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley blasted off to the International Space Station on a trip that's the first of its kind. The pair were on board the Crew Dragon capsule and Falcon 9 rocket, both developed by SpaceX.
And this has gone as well as we could have expected it to go. So I just want to say a big congratulations to NASA, big congratulations to SpaceX.
It's the first private business to accomplish the feat of sending people to space. The launch ends a nearly decade-long Russian monopoly on manned spaceflight. Moscow's dominance started when NASA retired its space shuttles in 2011. And it comes at a high cost. Seats on Russian rockets are worth $90 million each.
It gets us out from an obligation and a dependence on the Russian system, which is good anytime, but it's particularly good now when, there's some significant geopolitical tensions.
U.S. taxpayers also benefit from passing on development to the private sector. NASA says the current commercial crew program has cost $6 billion. Doing everything in-house would have been 5 times more expensive.
And of course, as we commercialize low Earth orbit, more resources will be available for the Moon program. We call it Artemis, and eventually Mars. And so that's really the future that we're looking towards.
The biggest winner may be SpaceX founder Elon Musk. His company beat longtime NASA contractor Boeing in sending people to space.
I'm really quite overcome with emotion on this day. It's kind of hard to talk, frankly. It's been 18 years working towards this goal.
Other billionaires are hot on his heels. Blue Origin, owned by the world's richest man Jeff Bezos, already has a $500 million U.S. Air Force contract for manned space missions. And Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic says it has $120 million in deposits from potential space tourists. There's a lot at stake in the race to dominate the sector. The commercial aerospace industry is expected to generate an astronomical $1 trillion in revenue by 2040. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more on what this historic launch means for space travel, let's go to Bill Gibson in the US. He's a professor of economics at the University of Vermont who specialises in space policy and the aerospace industry. Welcome to Money Talks, Bill. Now, no doubt this was an amazing feat for Elon Musk and SpaceX. So as we heard there, prior to this, NASA had been sending astronauts via the Russians, which was estimated to have cost them around $86 million per astronaut. SpaceX has managed to just charge $55 million per person. How has the company been able to reduce costs?
Well, the main thing is that they don't have to worry about all of the politics involved in NASA. Because if you look at the map of the United States, one thing is that it's carved up into is the various states all have a piece of the action when NASA sets out a contract. Now, to say that this is the first commercial visit to the International Space Station is correct. But if you think about it, we don't ever spend money in space. Every bit of the money that we spend is always on Earth. And that was true with the Saturn V. Boeing built it, North American Aviation built it, Douglas and IBM were all contractors that built that spacecraft. That's the Saturn V that took us to the moon. So in some sense, this is not a radical departure from history. What it is a radical departure from who runs the ship. That is, when NASA was in command of the Apollo program, everything had to go through government channels. Here, we short-circuit that to a great extent, and the savings have just been phenomenal. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is that the ability to take risks of the private sector amounts to a cost. In the government, it's not just a cost. It's also political prestige and political liability. And so that piles up dollar on top of dollar to make things like space exploration extremely expensive.
Now, when Elon Musk launched SpaceX way back in 2002, I don't think anyone had heard of the term astropreneur, but we're now seeing it used more and more for all these startups that are really looking to do business in space or in that field. Can you explain to us what is the potential there to make money from the final frontier?
Okay, so we have now around 4,000 to 5,000 different firms in the world that are directly and indirectly involved in space exploration. Now, of course, the biggest customer on the face of the planet is government. It's going to be the governments of the world. In fact, the Turkistat 6A just shows right there that Turkey is interested in putting in a satellite into geostationary orbit, and of course they want to get there as cheaply as possible, and so they select SpaceX. That says that there's another customer. There are many, many other avenues here with respect to the abilities of private sector firms to sell directly and indirectly their services. Yeah. Space tourism is by far the most controversial. It's been said that you can't really go to space unless you're trained as an astronaut the way NASA and Russia has done.
I'm so sorry, Professor. We will have to leave it there, but it is such a fascinating discussion. But thank you so much again for your time.